We're on Psoas Saturday today. So some of you know more about the psoas than others because I like to think of it as the celebrity muscle. And it often takes the blame for, well, let's just say for everything. And the truth of the matter is the psoas, if it's not functioning correctly, it's because there is a whole conglomerate of muscles that aren't firing correctly. So the main, hey Eddie, how are you? The main function of the psoas, if we're using it for movement, is hip flexion. So you can go ahead and think like if you're sitting in a chair, your hip is in flexion, right? And then also lateral rotation, so external rotation, I usually call it. But that's basically how it functions as a muscle. But you can see I have Mr. Bones here for you. It's really not meant so much, some would argue, I would be one of those, to function as a muscle because it's also called, Liz Cook calls it the messenger or the midline. We sometimes refer to it as our spiritual muscle. It definitely has energetic qualities, and when I say it, there's two. We'll go through that in a moment. But it carries messages, and it is the main, or they are the main muscles that connect your trunk to your lower half. So what I like to say is the main muscles that connect your spiritual, intellectual being to your animal being. You know, the fight or flight, very primitive response, right? It's that psoas muscle that's going to make that start to fire. So it's the main muscle in the fight or flight. So there's a lot of ways that it can get stuck. And what I prefer to say is, as opposed to most people that take an approach to stretching the psoas because they think it's too tight, it doesn't respond well to that. Think of your psoas like a sponge. And if it's not functioning right, it's because it's dried out. We need to take that sponge and hydrate it and put it in water. Not stretch it out. If you try to stretch a sponge that's dried out, it's not going to be very happy with you. The psoas is the same. So I'm mentioning this because as we do this practice today, remember that first of all, pendiculation really isn't about stretching per se. It's about engaging muscles, lengthening them, and releasing them. And the same thing is true with the psoas. But also to know that in your mind's eye, think of hydrating your psoas. So I often use the analogy of it is literally, your psoas is the beef tenderloin in the body. So if you eat beef tenderloin, so you can see that the beef tenderloin is a very different type of muscle than anything else. And that beef tenderloin can get like a piece of beef jerky. And if you're vegetarian, my apologies, get rid of all that imagery. The other way you think of it is that your psoas could be either like a green bean or a cucumber, right? So we're going cucumber today. And I'm just going to take a moment with Mr. Bones just because, not because we're going into the anatomy lab because we all need to pass any sort of test, but I like to teach what I call the imagery of anatomy. So if we can normalize what's in our body and understand it and picture it in the mind's eye, it can help us to work with it because energy goes where our thoughts flow, right? So if we're able to picture these two muscles, it's really helpful to hydrate it, to heal it, to relax it. So now I'm just going to take Mr. Bones here, and I may need to come a little bit closer in. Excuse me while I readjust. And my makeshift laboratory. So the psoas attaches, I'll flip him just for a moment. He likes to dance sometimes for me. It attaches to what we'd say is your 12th vertebrae. So your 12th vertebrae is right about where your bottom ribs are. Okay, the reason why that's really important is because the other thing that attaches there is your diaphragm. So the first thing we do when we look at working with the psoas is how is your respiration? Because they have a very intimate relationship. It can be the respiration's not flowing correctly, which can keep that hydrated or keep that psoas from hydrating itself, or vice versa. If we've had a sort of emotional trauma or physical trauma to the body, that can affect respiration. But so imagine it, touch the mid-back right at the bottoms of your ribs there. That's where it starts, but it actually attaches to, I'm going to see if I can get it all the way in here. Do you see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big red squares? That would be the front of your lumbar spine, your 5 lumbar vertebrae. So the psoas actually attaches to the front, and I say this is the stira side, the steadiness, versus the back side of the spine is the sukha, the sweetness or the mobility. So this is what gives us structure, is the front of the spine. You can see the discs in there, right? And so this is attaching to that structural side of the spine in the front. It comes in here through the hip, and let's see if I can turn that right there. So we call it the iliopsoas because this is the iliacus muscle. It attaches to that, and then it actually comes all the way down to the lesser trochanter. So it's going to attach. You can touch it. Go right in your inner thigh, and that's where it goes. So again, this is not an anatomy lab that I want you to remember where these 2 psoas muscles go as much as just having that image for yourself. When we're moving, think of it going all the way from your mid-back down into your inner thigh, right? And attaching to the front side, that stira side of your spine. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful for all of you. I'm going to roll Mr. Bones off of screen. Thank you, Mr. Bones. And I'm back. Gonna reset the camera and we'll get started. So we're gonna start today in a side lying position, and I'm gonna choose to come onto my right side. And you may want a blanket or a pillow or something like that. You'll notice I do have socks on today. Again, this is one that's nice to have a slippery floor, so it can be a sock practice. If you have your socks there, put them on. If not, you can still slip along with me. So we're gonna come down onto the right side, and we're gonna land first on the right side. And whatever you're putting under your head, just watch that you're not shortening the left side of the neck. Put just enough underneath the head to where you feel like your neck is more in a neutral position. If your right arm is in any way uncomfortable, draw the arm forward. So instead of resting on the outer shoulder, you're resting more on the shoulder blade. And then just stack your hips. Let your legs fall together if that feels okay. And I want you to just take a few breaths. We're going to work first with the left side. So you might even place your hands on your left ribs. So remember that one of the easiest, most functional ways to hydrate psoas is through our breath, through respiration. That and the idea of you are your thoughts, your energy flows wherever your awareness goes, all of those things, right? So start to breathe into your left lung. As you do that, picture that what we call the origin, the upper attachment point of that left psoas. Maybe you can even feel a little bit of movement in your back ribs, in the front. And follow that. Imagine following it all the way down through the front of the spine, the disc side, through that, I call your hip, it's like a baseball glove, right? The inside of the baseball glove, and then down into that lesser trochanter in your inner thigh. So as you're breathing, just imagine that relationship between the diaphragm moving, you're filling your left lung, you're emptying your left lung, and just that is creating a nice even bit of flow in the psoas. Or notice if your breath is jumpy at all. And we're also landing, so sense everything that's touching the ground on your right side, particularly as you breathe out. Let yourself land in any parts of your body that are touching the ground. And you'll know now too, if you want extra padding underneath you, please do that. You can slip a blanket under you. But just breathing in and hydrating just that left side. And part of the reason we land is to make sure that we're physically comfortable before we start the movement. So if you need to make any adjustments, ask yourself, is there anything you could do to be a little bit more comfortable, and give yourself that. And then we'll start with the psoas slide. So you're going to take your left leg, and you're going to come onto the big toe side of the left foot, maybe take your right leg a little longer, just kind of to get it out of the way. And start to slide the left leg towards you and away from you. Just really slowly notice that movement. So we're coming into a flexion, which we know that flexion is one of the actions of psoas. So if you want to do it to your breath, you could do the exhalation, drawing the leg in, and the inhalation, extending. So I'm doing it slow to show you what the movement of the, and when I'm saying movement, the contracted or the shortened state of psoas. So as you draw that leg in, we're going to add that lateral or external rotation. So the way you do that is, instead of sliding on your big toe, as you're drawing the leg in, simultaneously try to get your whole footprint on the ground. So pinky toe side down to the ground. And you'll notice as soon as you do that, you can't come as high with the knee. That's okay. Try to lift the inner knee. So now we're doing the flexion and the lateral rotation. And you might feel some interesting stuff going on in your outer hip. This is a really good one too. I do it first because it's an assessment for you. For most people, if you have a sticky side of your psoas, it is just one side typically. So notice how free-flowing this side is. And then we're going to take it a little bit more purposefully into the stretch. So you're still exhaling and shortening or contracting it. But now as you inhale, take the leg longer, keep your knee straight, and reach behind you. So we're going into extension. I still like to keep the foot on the floor and just slide it, because I actually do a little internal rotation of the thigh too. But you can also play with lifting the leg if you want to do that. You could lift it and turn it in. And then as you exhale, slide it towards you. So inhale, extension of the hip, maybe a little bit of internal rotation. Exhale, flexion of the hip, external rotation. It's one of the simplest things we do, and one of the nicest, most easeful ways to hydrate psoas. So if you want to add a little bit more on the extension, you might take your left hand overhead. Oop, forgot to lift. Just explore, just this slide. I'll leave you in peace. Notice your breath. So your breath, just like when we did the back bends, if you were with me that day, the breath can help facilitate spaciousness for the psoas, breathing into your left lung. On your inhale, stretching. And I like to do this one breath per movement, but there's always the option to stop. So maybe stop at the top of the inhalation. Take a few breaths there, breathing into your left side. Think of the psoas and its length from your 12th vertebrae, running through the front of the lumbar area, your low back, and into the inner thigh. Release that completely. And then take it into that more contracted state for a few breaths. Hold it there. Action. And let that go completely and slowly. And then if you want to slide a few more on that side, please feel free to. I kind of tend to go in between stopping and holding for a few breaths and sliding. But take the time to assess for yourself. What does this side feel like? What's your range of mobility? Last few. And then pause and drop. And we're going to roll onto our back to do that magic moment of assessment. So come onto your back. If it's comfortable, take both legs long. And wherever you want your hands and arms, maybe jelly roll your legs. And feel yourself. Feel yourself through left and right. And we didn't do a land on the back to begin with, so there's no comparison there, but there is perhaps a comparison now of left to right. The way that your legs are resting on the ground, the backs of the hips. Maybe even the accessibility of your breath and the left side of the torso versus the right side. So thinking of the psoas not as a muscle so much, but as a connective tissue and a very smart, energetic connective tissue. The great communicator between the upper body and the lower body. And can you feel, sense any difference in the communication right now between the left and the right? It can show in a physical way, the weight of your one leg or your one hip. It could show in the way you're breathing. Or just a knowing and a new awareness. Sometimes you can visualize one side more than the other. It's more accessible to you. So note, this is very different than holding yoga lunges and doing yin yoga, and I love yin yoga, but to me this is the way that I hydrate and heal my psoas. Stretching is for a whole different reason. And then we're going to switch. So please feel free to take your time. You're going to roll onto your left side. I'm going to turn and face you. But you can roll onto your left side. Bring any sort of head support with you if it's not there. And just start by landing again. You can let the weight rest on the left shoulder blade. Take that left arm forward. Let your legs stack wherever it's comfortable. And if you want, you can take your right hand to your right ribs. And introduce yourself to right psoas, just through your breath. See if you can breathe into your hand. Feel that 90-degree expansion through the front right ribs, the side ribs, and the back ribs. Like a half circle shape. And as you're doing that, visualize the space that the psoas holds in your body. From the 12th vertebrae, where it connects with the diaphragm, all the way running through the lower part of your back, those 5 lumbar vertebrae, and the front side, coming through your hip pocket and into your inner thigh. So see that space. Visualize it. Breathe to it. Letting yourself land into your left side now. Your left side is quiet and supportive as we get ready to play with the right side. So start by just tipping onto the big toe. On your right foot, you can extend your left leg a little bit if it's in the way, and slide it towards you. You can first just slide it towards you without lifting it. So just that flexion. I don't know if you can hear that. I've got some really crazy rain out there. So I'm getting some extra hydration. If you want to join me in that idea of the water, how much of our body is water. So once you're finding just the flexion, and remember that is the shortening, the tightening, the recruiting of psoas, Then add that little bit of trying to get your footprint, particularly the pinky toe side of your foot, down to the ground, so the external rotation, and then just slide it away and let it relax. So start by doing the active contraction, the recruitment, and then just completely relaxing it. You can exhale, slide it towards you, and inhale, let the thigh fall. And one of the things you may note is that this side slides a little differently than the first side. You may feel it in a different place. Might be more or less appreciative of this movement. And then if you want to add that lengthening out, you're going to take the right leg behind you. Like I said, I like to keep my toes on the ground, and the weight of the leg is still supported by the ground, and reach it back, internally rotate it. But you might also lift your leg. See what works for you. And then as I exhale, sliding it towards me, lifting the inner thigh. Inhaling back into the extension of the hip and a little internal rotation. And exhale, slide it. Take your time and feel. If you want to add the arm just to get a little more side stretch, you can reach all the way up and over. To lift. It's easy to skip out, particularly the lifting part. Just keep exploring your movement potential. Think of your psoas shortening as the leg comes in and lengthening as the leg comes out. And you're breathing into your right side. So the breath helps to create space in the right side in and around the psoas. And take a few more here. If you want to stop and hold more like a pandiculation, you can do that too. Hold in the lengthening, hold in the shortening. And a slow, complete release. Feel when your body just lets go into gravity. You're no longer holding it in any way. And you can also do the hold in the shortened state, drawing the thigh towards you. Take a few breaths there. I'm feeling a lot in this outer right hip today, so I'm just saying, hey, it's okay. I still love you. And slowly let that go. We're going to roll back onto our back again. I'm going to encourage you to, if you're using something underneath your head, absolutely fine, but check that you don't have pillow head, that your head's not way up here. And once again, the throat is open and you have the curve in the back of the neck, the natural curve. I usually go without anything. That's just the way my head falls. But you decide for yourself. We're going to land again on our back just to take the time to feel. To feel what did we create. And noticing once again the way your body's resting on the ground. Any differences in the weight of the leg, the way your back of your buttocks or your low back is resting on the floor, even your shoulder blades. Take a few breaths, thinking of breathing now into both sides. Land right in that spot between the 12th rib, where psoas and diaphragm connect. And as you breathe out, think of sending that breath down through the front of the lumbar vertebrae and all the way to the inner thighs, to those inner thigh bones. Last round of breath there. And then we're going to bend the knees, place the feet on the floor. So just looking at most of the names, I know most of you know the arch and curl, but we're going to be using that movement to do the next hydration for the psoas. And this one is, so we can start with the hands on the thighs, and I'm coming into constructive rest, so feet on the ground, and you just want to check that you have your natural curve in your spine. So what I want to mention is, and this is where you can feel it, we already did something for the psoas, but you still might feel it. So when we do our constructive rest, I often instruct it as begin to walk your feet out. And as you walk your feet out very slowly, notice if your lumbar is arching. If that's happening, that's often because of psoas. Because remember, the psoas attaches to the front of the spine. So when we lengthen out the legs, if it's tight, if it's not releasing or hydrated, the lumbar, the front of the lumbar lifts up. So that's what gives us that banana back or that feeling of tightness in the lumbar area. So that's going to be important when we start to do this movement. So find your natural curve where your low back feels long, relaxed. And then you're going to take a breath out, and we'll start with the left leg, and just hug the left leg in. Use all of the might you can comfortably. So use the thigh. I even draw the top of the foot towards my shin. So you're coming into a full flexion here, beyond where we'd be sitting in a chair. And then as you inhale, set the foot down, and you're going to arch the back. So remember, you can arch by lifting the belly, lifting the low back, pressing the tailbone down. You might press your shoulders into the ground too. But I'm going to arch. And in my curl, I'm going to draw that leg in. That's the shortening of the psoas. You can picture it. Inhale, arch. That's just starting to stretch psoas. Exhale, curl. Take a few more. Very simple. And then next time you curl, we're going to hold that for a few breaths. If it's available, you're also welcome to lift your head. But what I try not to do is tuck the chin towards the chest. I'm going to keep my gaze up. I might even lift my arms. So remember that as a fight or flight protector, the psoas is what makes the front body close up. So that's what it's doing. It's closing up. Squeeze it in for a few breaths. And now as you inhale and release, take your left leg, slide it out long, but arch your back like you were doing before. So you're going to do that big arch, because that's where your back wants to go when you first take your leg out. Then relax the leg, even jelly roll it, and just exhale and curl, meaning press the low back and lower ribs into the ground, and inhale and arch. And do that a few times. So it's just an arch and a curl with the left leg long and relaxed. And check that you can really keep that left leg long and relaxed. And the other thing is, it's easy to move from the right foot. I really try to make this a movement from the psoas. So moving from your ribs, from your low back, your pelvis, remember your hips, to your iliacus muscle. And then slide the foot back in. We're going to do that a few more times, eventually adding our arm. So take an inhalation. You can arch both feet on the ground. Exhale, curl in. Maybe hold that for a few breaths. So shorten and tighten. It's active. On the next inhalation, slide that leg out. Notice I'm taking the foot to the ground. I'm sliding it. I'm arching my back. Front body's long. And then I exhale and curl. So at the curl here, that's when we're really lengthening psoas. And you might feel it when you go to curl on the exhale and the leg's long. Maybe you feel a little tightening. Sometimes it's right in the hip flexor, the inner thigh, or you might feel it in your lumbar spine. Just a nice, easy rocking motion. Remember, we're hydrating, so go with the water theme. Just gently, like a wave pattern, rocking back and forth. My head's going with the flow too. Chin towards the chest on inhale, or nose towards the tail. Exhale, tail follows nose. So we're going to do another one, and I'll give you the option to add the arm on, because what we find is the psoas can actually create tightness in the shoulders and the upper body as well. Because we have trapezius, we have a number of different muscles that come all the way up through from our pelvis to our shoulders. So once again, inhale and arch. Exhale, curl. Bring the leg in, option to lift up. And if your neck's not liking this, then we don't go here, but you'll want to have the muscles in the front of the neck contracted too. So think whole front body contracted. And this time when we go to extend, if it's available, you can inhale, arch, take your leg long and your left arm. And you might feel some pulling right around the shoulder blades or the rib cage. As you exhale, relax the arm and leg, press that left side into the ground. Imagine trying to push out that arch. Inhale, let the left side arch. Exhale. Press down. Remove that arch. If there's too much pulling in the shoulder, you can take the arm partway overhead and let the elbow bend. So really important to note that you're not tightening the muscles in the arm or the leg, and you're just flowing back and forth. Exhale, relax. Pause for a moment. I can already feel the difference in my two sides. How about you? And we'll do two more. Take an inhale and arch. So we find the arch with both feet on the floor, knees bent. Exhale. Curl in, tighten, shorten. So front body is contracted. We'd call this the red light reflex in somatics. We're closing the front body down because it's our vulnerable side. And Psoas is protecting it. And then next breath in. A slow explosion out with the arm and the leg. Arching the back. You can press left shoulder blade into the ground, left hip. And then exhale, push the left ribs into the ground. So let it arch. We're not quite fully hydrated through the psoas and the arch. And then as we curl, we really take that psoas out long. Long and juicy on the exhale. What's your favorite juice? I've been drinking a lot of fresh orange juice lately, so I'm going to take that one in. And then slide it back down again. Juicy like an orange. Pause. Last one for the left. Inhale and arch, so feel what the arch feels like with both feet on the floor. Exhale. Curl in and tighten. And remember, when we're curling in and tightening, you still got to breathe. You might have to bring your breath up to your chest because you may, if you were with me when we did transversus abdominis and pelvic floor yesterday, you can even keep those contracted and braced. That's a bit of an art if you're new to this, but it can be braced. Squeeze it all in. And then on an inhalation, lengthen out through the arm and the leg. Arch your back, come onto the shoulder blade and the hip. Let the arm and the leg relax. Exhale. Push that left side rib cage into the ground. Flatten it out. Take a few more arches and curls. Sometimes you can even notice, if you just started putting the arm overhead, the first couple might have been tighter. They feel a little bit more spacious now in and around the upper ribs and the underarm. The pectoral muscles in the front are also part of that fight or flight that work with psoas. So we tend to get tight through that front area around your collarbone. And then for the sake of releasing that, slide your legs in just for a moment. Let go. Do a few arch and curls. And then we're going to take a full minute. I'm going to be completely quiet, and I want you to just feel yourself from left toes to left ear and right toes to right ear. Power of stillness and silence. And just allowing your breath to do any work if there is work. The work of creating that levity on the inhale and receiving gravity on the exhale. Noticing the two sides. I'm just going to do my little butt turn there so we can do the second side. Please slide your feet back into constructive rest. Arms can relax. Feel yourself through your right side. So connect. Image or experience the right side from the ribs through the front of the lumbar area. Remember Mr. Bones, he showed you. Front of the hip socket and into the inner thigh. And then take an arch on the inhale. And as you exhale and curl, first just start by drawing that thigh in. And do a few of those in motion. Inhale, arch, foot down to the ground. Exhale, tighten and curl. Sometimes I'll start to squeeze the shoulders in too, get those pectoral muscles going. Inhale, press the shoulder blades into the ground. As foot comes down, we arch the back. Exhale, curl. So then we're going to start to find that bigger curl and a longer hold time. So inhale, arch. You can stay right here, head on the ground, just squeezing shoulders in. If it's not contraindicated, so uncomfortable for your neck, feel free to lift up and reach. So think of shortening or protecting your front body. Like we go into a little ball of protection. And just release that on an inhale. Pause for a moment. So check to see that you're not straining. It's working but not straining. So I like to say sensation without strain. Effort without fear. So then the next one, we'll do our inhale arch. Exhale, curl in. Take a few breaths. You're breathing there. Squeezing in on the exhale. You can get that transverse abdominis and pelvic floor going too if you want. And this one will explode just the leg out. So on your next inhalation, let the foot find the floor, slide the leg long, arch the back. So come onto your shoulder blades and the pelvis, the back of the hips. And then exhale, curl, press that right side into the ground. Inhale and arch. Whoop, I forgot. Remember to release your right leg. Shake it out if you need to. And usually you can tell if your leg, when it's extended, is relaxed because your toes will turn slightly out to the edges usually. So I always know if my toes are pointing up, it's because I'm not relaxing the leg. So I give it that little shake. Inhale and arch. We're almost at that full juiciness of psoas. And as we exhale and curl, we take it that little bit longer. Your head can flow. Nose follows the tail on the inhale. Tail follows the nose on the exhale. But focus on moving from your rib cage, pushing it down, the low back. And then come back. We'll do one more with just the leg. Inhale and arch. Exhale. Curl. Squeeze in. Keep breathing. When you're ready on an inhalation, slide that right leg long, arch the back, press your shoulder blades down, the buttocks, and then as you exhale, press the center of the torso, the ribs into the ground, relax your leg. Inhale, arch, and exhale, curl. And I'm feeling like my left side is trying to overpower, so I really have to focus on working on the right side. My left side is my overactive psoas side. You may notice that too. So focus on pressing into the right and then bring that back in. So this next one, the option will be there to extend through the arm too. Inhale and arch. And exhale. Curl and tighten into a little ball. I sometimes call this small. Big and small. This is our small. Feel the tightness across your collarbones and your pectoral region, your abdominal muscles, maybe pelvic floor. So we remember that the psoas works in conjunction with other muscles in the front body to tighten and shorten. And then when you're ready, on an inhalation, take the leg long and the arm, let them relax, let them be just resting on the ground, arch the back, exhale, curl. And take your time, play with a few arches. And then curl, press that arch out. Think of pushing the ribs into the ground. So interesting things can happen I like to share with you. So I'm noticing on this right side, I'm feeling a lot more tightness through the front of the hip flexor when I press down on the exhale. I didn't have that on the left side. I don't ask why, I just say, okay, I noticed you. Let go, come back. We'll do 2 more with the arm like that. Inhale, arch both sides, press your shoulder blades down if you'd like. Exhale, curl in, tighten, squeeze, breathe. Next inhalation, lengthen, reach out through your arm and leg, but let them relax when they get long. Exhale, curl, press into the ribs. So I'll try to push out that curve in your right side on exhale and lift the curve on the inhale. It's like you're gently just taking if your psoas is like a spring, you're just gently pulling that spring apart a little bit and then letting it come back. Slide it back. 1 more for the right side. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curl in, squeeze it in. See if you can keep that left side quiet. You probably have to breathe up into your chest. Get ready for your next inhale to reach and lengthen. But let the arm and leg be heavy. Press into your shoulder and your hip on the inhale. Exhale, press into the waist. Flatten out your waist. And take a few more. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curl. And slide it back. I feel like my grass out there getting way hydrated. Sometimes it's nice when we finish, just take your legs and hug them into your back. And we're going to finish in a constructive rest position. Because constructive rest is one of the positions we do to release and relax the psoas. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. So we know constructive rest as feet on the floor. And the knees are in line with the hips and the ankles in line with the knees. So this is extremely healing for psoas. If your legs are able to relax, your low back is able to relax. If not, one thing you can do is put a block between the knees. But usually what's even going above and beyond that, sorry for the noise there, to bring more relaxation in is to put your legs up on a chair. So if you have a chair handy or you've got a couch there, you could swing your legs up on the couch. And psoas really likes this. So I just come up towards the chair, put my legs, I've got my bolster on there because that's the height that I like. I happen to know that. And yes, I spend lots of time in this position. So you're welcome to keep your feet on the ground, but if you find your legs are fighting in you in any way, trying to stay engaged, tightening, or if your knees fall in towards one another, then you want to put that block between your knees. And we're going to be here for just a minute or 2, just completely releasing, relaxing. I'll invite you to place your hands right around your navel center. Just spread your fingers out. Sometimes it's nice to take your index fingers and touch the tips of the index fingers right around the navel center. We're going to do some soft belly breath. So as you breathe in, you might sense it as the abdomen rising and filling, but also notice if your fingertips are touching the way they slightly spread apart. They come away from one another as you breathe in. And on the breath out, the fingertips, again, just gently touch. Soft, passive exhalation. Full, complete inhalation. And play with those concepts of levity and gravity, and using the imagery of anatomy. So seeing yourself through psoas on the left and the right, starting from your low ribs. Notice how long your lumbar spine is. You can see psoas through the front of the lumbar spine, coming into your hips, those baseball gloves, and all the way to the inner thighs. Inhalation, the levity, the rising up, the lifting, the spaciousness. And the exhalation is the landing, the release, the purging, gravity. Stick with your breath if you'd like. You can feel yourself through your bones, letting the muscles rest onto the bones. Feel the weight of the thighs falling into the hips. The weight of the pelvis completely supported by the ground. And the whole spinal column resting. And a smooth, relaxing abdominal breath is sending that message of peace, of replenishing, of relaxation to your psoas. I'm just going to begin to gently move my ankles, rolling them around. This is a position I highly recommend you stay here for 10 to 15 minutes really to fully feel saucy. But I'm going to come out. Take your time. You can hug your knees into your chest. The other position that psoas really, really adores is side-lying fetal curl. So come into that before you come out, even if you're going to stay there for a while. Hug your knees into your chest around your spine. Remember that protective position that it takes us into. Let it take you into that protective position. And then just gently rock your body. Let's give it a nice little soothing rock, just like we'd rock a baby to soothe it, calm it. And you can also work with sound. Psoas really appreciates sound. So if you want to take a breath in through your nose, as you breathe out, make a soft shh sound. That SH, like we're calming. The SH is the calming sound for the nervous system. And I always remind myself that all my favorite Sanskrit words sound with that. Shavasana, Shanti, to name a few. So just rock yourself, breathe in your nose, and out your mouth. Just soothing your own body. And by body, I mean physical body, mental, emotional, and your spiritual self. When you're ready to come up, use the strength of your arms. Take your time. Really do take your time. Remember, you're like a snow globe. You don't want to shake it all up after that. I'm going to work my way up to the screen. Coming in to officially close out our beautiful Psoas practice. I hope that that was really soothing for you. I put the word succulent in the title because I love succulents. Because succulents are plants that I can ignore and I don't need to water them all that often, and they still seem to grow in spite of me. So I like to think of my Psoas like succulents. But at the same time, sometimes they need to be repotted. They need a little attention, create more space for them. So I think that's what we did today. Thank you for joining me. Peace, joy, love, and light. Tomorrow is play and body spirals, full body spirals, and